You just gave me goosebumps when you said a simulation because it felt so like synchronicity to me. I was meditating probably 4 or 5 months ago and I was going through a tough thing and I was really feeling stressed and I was like, I just want to get back to my core and not be so tied up into this ego. And in my head, I heard,
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Rich Sorup, is an Emmy Award-winning TV producer with over 2 decades of experience on major shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and The Meredith Vieira Show. Rich has since transitioned into coaching, where he draws on his experience of guiding thousands from celebrities to contestants, helping them move from panic to confidence and uncover their authentic voice. Trained in neuro-linguistic programming, Rich combines proven techniques with deep personal insight. Having faced divorce, job loss, and serious health challenges himself, he brings empathy and real world vision to those seeking meaningful transformation. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
oh, thanks, Doug. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Now, something I saw, I think might have been on your website that wasn't in the intro there, was many, many years ago, you were game enough to do some stand-up comedy. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
curious, did you ever get, because this is about intuition, I'm just curious, did you ever get to the stage where you got tongue-tied or anything and maybe something came through you just intuitively started saying something? Or I don't know, I've never had been game to try stand-up comedy. I don't know. I can't empathize with that one.
That's actually really intuitive actually as a question because what happens when you do stand-up comedy, it's really funny. You get a stage, you're terrified, at least for me. My knees were shaking, my mouth was dry. Everything that you try to remember, you forget. The lights you're not even in your body anymore. And then as you get more and more comfortable, you realize you're speaking in a voice that's not even yours. Like this other voice takes over you and it puts out this thing and all of a sudden you go, hey, you ever wonder, and it's not, doesn't sound like you, it doesn't feel like you, and it takes hundreds of performances just to be able to feel like yourself on stage. And once you get to that point, the best stuff happens when you are actually writing the joke in real time. So when you're new, you structure the joke so carefully to have everything exactly as you want it, and it comes across rehearsed and not real. When you get better, you say, I have a really funny idea here. And then I'm going to go up and do this kind of like this, but let's see what happens. And then your instincts take over if you're a funny person, and the better joke happens once the pressure of the audience is there.
Yeah, yeah. I know I do some fire safety training and a few other things now. I used to be a professional firefighter many years ago, and I work for a private company 2 days a week. And I go to most 99% of the time, I'm at the client's workplace with, a dozen, 2 dozen of their staff. And I've got my standard scripts. And, I mean, it's literally thousands of times I've gone through these 1.5 hour training sessions. But, sometimes if I get a bit animated, I just let myself sort of go. If the room's starting to die a bit, there's someone's starting to nod off or whatever, I get a bit lively, and it's amazing what comes out. Like it's a twist on the standard um, narrative, and and I think, where did that come from? Like and I think that was brilliant. Like I've just learnt something new. It just came
As you're
from
teaching,
yeah.
as you're teaching the group, you're learning. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I've
I mean,
actually found that's where I've learnt the most in life is when I've taught people things and only barely known enough grassroots, just knew enough to be able to teach it. And I've been not necessarily my choice, I've been thrown into it by in workplaces and things like that. It was like, yep, you're qualified, you can now teach this. And it's like, really? But then you're forced to get up there and start teaching it to those who don't know much about it. And yeah, just have always found weird and wonderful things come out. And it's like, that's actually really good. I don't know where that came from, but
people love stories.
yeah,
If you go in and you just have a bunch of information, I used to have to train contestants to be on the show on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And if I went in and just said, all right, on the show, we don't want you to tell us your whole life story. for every question. I had to make it entertaining. I'd have to say, if you get a question about Abraham Lincoln, we don't want to hear about how that what bill he's on. We all know what bill he's on. You turn it from just kind of, hard facts to a story and it resonates with people and they pay attention and they laugh and it's community. Especially for what you were doing. We used to have the fire people come in and teach us about how to get out of the building at ABC. And that guy that would come in every year was such a character and so funny. And he held all of our attention. And also then he even got us emotional at points because he talked about things that happened in the department and people that he lost. And, you're all of a sudden, you're not looking at somebody who's wasting 10 minutes of your day. You're looking at as another human being who's connecting to you, and then all the information resonates.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know because I know when I get them emotional, they get what I'm talking about, and I have to say to them now, in a minute, like this is going to say this and this is going to happen, and we're going to sit here, we're going to pretend to jump up and leave the room. I don't want you to hop up, and then I start getting into it, and then my hands come up, and I go, all right, we're all up now, and we're all heading out the door. And then two or three of them will start to jump up, and I'm like, sit down. I told you to sit. We're pretending to leave the room, but I actually do leave the room, like evacuating. And because I'm then showing them you've got to close the door. We've got to keep the heat and smoke in that room. We come out and we close it. So I'll close the door, and then I quickly open it and peer back in. I say, and now we're outside and we're all actually heading to the assembly area. Da, 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 da. And then if you want to get an extinguisher, you get it from out here. You get it ready. We open the door. We attack it. We go back out. We don't let an extinguisher off when anyone's in the room. And they're all. And I've had people like I had one guy. I often use scuba diving because I'm a scuba instructor as an analogy teaching for going through the process of remaining calm. And this one guy really triggered him because he had water safety issues, and he got really emotional. He just put his hand up and he said, "I'm really triggered
Wow.
right now." Like, and I said, "Well, I'm I'm not apologizing for you being triggered." But I'm really happy that you've emotionally engaged in the training and it's being effective on you. You're getting it. You know what it's like to not be calm because right now you're not. And he got to that state just through me talking. And
What an amazing way to communicate, by the way. I
yeah,
mean, that we were talking when the last time we talked about men and communication for you to be able to say, I'm not apologizing for you being triggered, but I am happy that you're feeling these emotions. I mean, we have such a hard time as men communicating our emotions,
yeah.
and the fact that you were able to do that in that situation in front of his coworkers was
Yeah.
is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And like and at the when it was all over, so when we finished that, then we go outside and I've got a little propane gas cylinder and a little small fire with propane, and they all get a carbon dioxide extinguisher and put it all out. And as soon as it was finished, I just because there was only like six of them that I was training that day, very small group. And they seemed to, it was a brand new workplace, but they seemed to have been working together long enough that they knew each other pretty well. They might have come from some other branch or whatever. And I was making sure he didn't leave. I really wanted to talk to him when it was all over and I had time. And so I said, he was talking to his co-worker and sort of waiting. And then he saw me sort of just hovering. And I said, "Oh, I just want to talk to you before you go." And then he's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he says, "Yeah, okay, well, what did you want?" And then so I started to gently talk to him about what had happened in there, like wanting to bring in just the two of us. And
Hmm.
he then just started talking, very happy to talk about it in front of his other co-worker who was there, and we had quite the conversation about it. Because I wanted to make sure he was okay. I didn't want to
Right.
just leave him like that. And I said, "Are you okay?" And da 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 da. And yeah, no, he was great, and he said, "No, I'm actually really happy that happened," because he said, "I've worked through that hundreds of times, and I thought it was over. I thought got past it." He said, "You've made me
Mm.
realize I had not got past that, and I need to do more work with it." So I thought, wow, what a great guy, because that's unusual to hear too, because I've never seen this guy before in my life, and he's working for it's an organization. Oh no, it was actually some government funded thing where it was accommodation for about 90 people who basically a homeless shelter, which is very uncommon where we live, like very uncommon. It's the only one I know
What do you
of.
mean? What's uncommon about it?
I mean, when I've been to San Francisco, I've gone around in bus tours and I've seen like hundreds of people lined up
Oh,
outside homeless
yeah,
shelters, like where
yeah.
and you only get the accommodation for the night. You know what I mean? Like, and
Right, right.
and then every morning you have to leave and then come back and try and get in again. And that's what this one was. And I'm like, wow, because we just don't where we live, we just don't have many homeless people. Like, just
Okay.
well, it's just not in our demographic. You can drive for 100 miles and struggle to find anyone homeless. Like, you
Mm.
really got to look hard. So anyway, yeah, but he was in that working in that kind of environment. So I guess he wasn't your average tradesman. He was someone he's had to help people emotionally and
He's so lucky that he had you there.
mm,
It could have been anybody that was doing that training. And the fact that you understand people and can talk to people and you know how to coach people through things, and you didn't just leave them and say, well, good luck.
mm,
Uh, that's sometimes I feel like things happen for a reason. It was good that you were in that training for him.
yeah, yeah. And I was pretty happy at the end that he was happy about it. He was like, "I'm glad you triggered me." Because now I
Right.
know, yeah, I know I've got to keep working on it. I thought it was gone. Yeah, yeah. But anyway,
That's
and
so
so now
interesting.
I'm actually when I do that part because I was just like it's pretend you're in my swimming pool. You got your mask on and your little scuba regulator and your head's under the water and that's spun him out. And I've had to like tone it down slightly now, like just the way I explain it because a picture sort of tells 1,000 words. I'm making them visualize the whole thing. Like,
Oh yeah, you're associating them.
yeah,
You're totally
very
associating
much.
them.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like you're not here in your workplace. You're in my swimming pool. The water's the perfect temperature. You're very comfortable. Go right into it. And it's only chest deep. You can stand up at any time and feel really comfortable.
Oh,
Like,
good,
yeah,
good, good.
yeah. I've
Yes.
had to add that dimension to it.
Yeah. I've had people I do timeline therapy with people, and I put them back into an event that happened, a traumatizing event, to try to collect the positive learnings to remove that event from their past and help them. So sometimes, though, when people go into that event and they're into the associated part of the exercise, they will really start to, get into the emotion, and you have to pull them out quickly. And we always say, there's a lot of different tools you can use, but the easiest one is to just open your eyes and look up, and it lifts you out of it. But I've seen people go into that associated state, where you're trying to like allow them to be where they need to be, but you don't want them to go too far. So you have to lift them out. And another thing that we use is before if you're going into something that you know is going to be traumatic, you have them picture a billboard with their phone number on it, and then you have them read the end of their phone number backwards. So when they get into if they get too much of a traumatic state, you go, all right, look at the billboard and read your numbers backwards, and it lifts them out of the association.
Right. Is that NLP?
Yeah, that's NLP. That's neuro-linguistic
Okay.
programming.
Yeah, and I'm vaguely familiar with it, but I've never trained in it. Sort of to yeah, yeah, interesting. So you've just got that. It's almost like a distractor, is it? Like it just would take
It
them.
just takes you out of, when you're associated, you're closer to the pain of whatever you're in. And when we see our most painful memories, or if we're imagining a future that is very stressful, you're usually seeing it through your eyes. So you're associated into the pain, which is why it's so close.
Mm,
So it's really just disassociating someone. If you're doing a visualization technique, you always want somebody to see it through their eyes, see it,
mm,
feel it, smell it, hear it, actually be in the moment so that they're really associated to that positive feeling. But when you want to take them out of pain, you're trying to get it so that they're now in the picture. They're not seeing it through their eyes. So I will have people put themselves in a snow globe so that they can actually see it and then push it further away from themselves and change it from color to black and white, change all the modalities, push it further and further away so that the emotions attached to that event can start to be pushed further and further away too. But in a moment of crisis, when somebody's really, in a light state of hypnosis and you're in their timeline and they start to really get too associated to the emotion, you can't so easily disassociate them. So you have to say, all right, look at the billboard, count the numbers backwards, and it'll lift them right out of the association.
mm. Interesting. Guys, if you're on a path of developing your intuition, and I know you are, that's why you're listening here, then the Neurovisor is a tool worth checking out. It uses light and sound to guide your brain into deeper states of awareness, helping you quiet the noise, tap into your inner knowing, and strengthen your intuitive muscle. And who doesn't want that? There's no pills, no fluff, just 11 minutes a day to reset your mind and reconnect with your instincts. I've bought myself one last Christmas and I've added it to my daily practice, and the shifts are real. This is not a paid ad, but if you use the link in the show notes for more information, I do receive a small percentage of the purchase price. I highly recommend you check it out. So I'm curious just really roughly, what percentage of your clients are male?
It's so funny that you would ask that question because when I got into coaching, that was my goal was to coach men. I felt like a lot of the men that I've had in my life, I grew up playing sports. I was a college athlete. I played baseball and played basketball in high school. And I was around that type of male. And by that, I mean like very testosterone, very like chest pumping men that don't always express their emotions. My dad was a factory worker. He was kind of that type of man too. Wasn't a big emotion person at all. And I was born a person who had a lot of emotions. We all are, but I was in touch even from a young age. So I kind of wanted to get into coaching to help men get in touch with who they are, but it hasn't gone that way. It's like I've ended up getting like a lot of my clients are women. And then when I have a client who's a woman, I'm usually like really connected and it's awesome. Quick results. And then I have started recently, maybe because I'm ready, to get a lot of male contestants, male clients who are, I know my old millionaire thing, male clients who are a lot like that person that I grew up with, a lot like my dad. And at first I was really nervous. I'm like, oh my God, this is more challenging for me than the other stuff. But now I've done enough of them, and then you go, yeah, this is why I want to do it, because they do have this inside of them. And your own projection onto them is not fair for them anyway to feel like, oh my God, I'm nervous. But the more men that I've worked with, the easier it's gotten. And now it's starting to take a turn where way more of the people that are coming in are male than women. When it started, it was the reverse. But it seems like the shift is starting to happen, and it's starting to go exactly where I had always wanted it to go.
Good. Yeah, that's wonderful. And like men, yeah, like say like your dad, I don't know. Did he have favorite sporting teams?
My dad was a huge Red Sox fan,
Yeah.
baseball.
Well, I'm sure when he was watching the game, he'd get emotional. He'd be pumping the sky like when
Yeah,
they would, hit a home run or whatever, like so we all express emotions. But we don't realize that sheer ecstasy when our team scores the winning run or whatever, and like the last 10 seconds of the game, eh, they don't associate that they're like, pumping the sky for 60 seconds, because their team won. But if you talk to them 5 minutes later and you say, what just happened? Why aren't you so excited about the Red Sox winning? Oh, I'm still excited. Yeah, but hang on. Like 4 minutes ago, you were pumping the sky. You picked up the empty beer can and threw it across the room. You were stoked. Why aren't you still doing that? Oh, well, I mean, oh, I was happy then. Well, what's the difference? And the difference is the emotion doesn't last that long. And it's whether it's an emotion you enjoy or don't enjoy. So I guess, I mean, I talk to men like that and say, hey, if you suddenly feel sad and you feel tears coming into your eyes, that's going to scare the absolute heck out of you, isn't it? Because you're feeling, feel embarrassed and shamed because you're crying in public or there's tears strolling down your face. But just know it's only going to last 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds at the most, because that's all your absolute elation at your sporting team. That's as long as that lasts, So it's like, and then I mean, I think if men got that and let it happen several times, they would realize, yes, this isn't going to last that long. Look, the last podcast I recorded last week, I bawled my eyes out in the middle of it, and I'm interviewing.
that's
It's like,
amazing.
yeah, it's like,
I love that.
and I'd had a call with the guy just like I had with you, and we're talking about stuff, and I just started talking about stuff with my dad, and
Hmm.
it's like then boom, and then I'm just bawling. And I was editing it last night, and I cut probably 20 seconds of it out because it was silence. And
What was it that made you feel that emotion?
my dad was very unemotionally available for us children. He was always there, and his whole contribution to the family was his wage every week when he came home Friday night with his pay. He was a blue collar worker. But I was explaining to this guy, we always knew that when dad was 11 or 12, his mum died. But it wasn't until his funeral 3 years ago that his younger brother told us that at the what she got probably less half three quarters of a mile down the road, she got hit by a drunk driver on her bicycle. And the
Wow.
ambulance driver picked her up, put her in the back of the ambulance, and small country town at the time, and knew where she lived, and brought her home. And the kids were in the front yard playing. So the ambulance driver called the kids over to say goodbye to mum because he could tell like the extent of her injuries. Like she died shortly after.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so at 11 and a half, he sort of went through that. And then all his dad did then was uh, his dad went into deep, grief over the whole thing and just started drinking beer. And because my dad was the oldest boy, he made my dad sit with him and drink beer and smoke. So at 12, dad became an alcoholic basically for his whole life then. It was like, and I mean, I've talked about that before, but just it's like when I'm talking about it right now, I've got no emotion at all.
Yeah.
But, 4 or 5 days ago, with basically a total stranger, I was telling the story and I didn't think I was going to get emotional because if I did, I wouldn't have told the story. Um,
Right.
but it came out and I was fine. And the guy at the other end, he was fine with it too. Like he's dealt with a lot of things, people like that, so he was fine and he was fine. He didn't interrupt me. He just let me cry. And so I cut that 20 seconds out and I was fine because I knew I was going to get over it. I wasn't ashamed. I didn't sort of go, oh, I'm so, and never once. And even when we stopped recording, I, I didn't even feel for a second to apologize to him. Like he was fine with it and I was fine with it. It just happened. And it was, I cut the 20 seconds out because it's pretty boring for the people listening. Like it's just like, there was nothing said. And so, um, all I'm getting at by that is if men would realize it doesn't last that long.
I wonder how much of that found its way into you,
Mm,
generationally.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know where you are.
I've done a lot of energy work and stuff because I know like the first person I went to who did like energy work, used tuning forks to find stuck energetic energy and use the resonance of the tuning fork to, you know, take that stuck energy out and let it keep flowing. I went to her and she said, "Well, what's going on, Doug? What do you need?" And I said, "I have no idea." I said, "But I just read about this in a book and I'm very curious about it." I said, "I'm sure you'll find something, but I've got nothing specific to tell you." And yeah, she found all sorts of things, but yeah, and so from there on for years, I've just not had specific issues, but I've known that, hey, I've got some messed up stuff back there, like that is going to have to get fixed. And yeah, of
It gets passed on without us even knowing that it's getting passed on.
course, yeah, yeah,
That trauma that my
yeah.
dad had to go through when he was younger. He didn't even have a birthday party until he was, I don't know, 15, 16. He was just kind of ignored.
Mm,
And his father was a big drinker and, same type of thing. He didn't really have a father figure that was like regularly until he was older. Once he got
mm,
older, they actually formed a great relationship because my grandfather quit drinking. But, you know, he didn't have great role models at all, at all. And so I look at my dad and I think, "Ah, he really came so far in one generation." Like,
mm,
I'm very proud of how far he came
mm,
in one generation. When I was growing up, I would think, why can't my dad be more like this? Why can't he be a little less angry? Why can't he be a better communicator? Why isn't he able to like show me the type of love that I want, which is like unconditional love and not love that is like bright and then all of a sudden some unexpected thing happens and you're just like, whoa, what just happened? The roof just got blown off the house. But as an adult, I look at my dad and I think you really helped us men in this line take a huge leap because you took a huge leap under very tough circumstances, and so
Yeah.
now I look at it as my responsibility as I have three sons, to take a huge leap. Yeah, and continue to help them to grow and talk to them all the time about. But you know what's crazy, Doug? I am such an emotional guy, and I have no problem crying in front of my kids. My daughter just graduated from high school last week. I made a video for her. It took me about 8 hours to make, and I cried so much making that video, going through old pictures and cried, streaming tears, crying just, and I was felt so refreshed, just like I had been like, gotten fresh air in like the mountains. And then I showed it to her and I cried again. And still, though, my 15-year-old doesn't believe in crying for men.
Mm.
I'm like, where does that come from? It doesn't come from me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, you probably noticed in that form I got you to fill out with just some, your bio and photo and all that sort of stuff. In there, I asked the question, it is an optional question, what's your birth date? Because just
Hmm.
because I study the ancient form of Chinese medicine, and in there, one of the three numbers that you get, and I have the same number as you, but in a different position, which just means something different. And it's the water sign. And so tears are water. So it's very people with the strong water personalities, yeah, tend to be more emotional and be more intuitive. So
I mean, I'm
it's
thankful. I'm thankful that that's who I am. I am
mm,
so happy to be this person.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to not be in touch with these emotions. It's a beautiful thing to be able to experience life this way.
Yeah, yeah. And the word emotion, motion, energy in motion, and it's just unseen. You just can't see it, but it's there. And I mean it's there because you when your sporting team wins, you feel the emotion, you feel the energy. And
That is such a good example, by the way. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking about how a lot of dads that can't show emotion so openly, they talk about sports all the time with their
mm,
kids.
mm,
That was me and my dad. We would talk, what's going on with the Red Sox? What's going on with the Patriots? Did you see this? And the coach did that. And I see that with my stepson and his dad. They talk about sports all the time. It's a way for men to be able to communicate with emotion in a safe place.
yeah. Well, they're experiencing emotions they enjoy constantly. Yeah. But they just have to get realized that the ones they don't enjoy, because there's no good or bad ones, it's all energy and motion and it's doing something different. The ones they don't enjoy come for a reason too. Everything has benefits and help, but they I guess if they get it that elation at their team winning the game doesn't last that long. It's short-lived. I mean, that still the next day, the next month, they're really happy about it and they'll brag about it to their co-worker who supports the other team. Like
Mhm.
we all do that. But it's not that like sky pumping, yeah, that was that first 30 to 60 seconds. And so when those ones we don't enjoy, they're just going to be short-lived. It's not going to be, and yeah, you'll be sad about it hours later because it was something, but you're not going to be bawling hours later. And if you do get it out that one time, like last week that we just talked about with my dad when he was young. Um, Last week it really got me, but this week I'm talking about it and I'm not feeling any emotion.
You let it
So
pass through.
yeah, it's right. Like it was sort of kind of stuck there. It flowed and it's joined the other energy and it's just flowing around and I can happily talk about it. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Rather than being afraid of it. And the other thing, I have no scientific backup for this one. This is just my own intuition. Is I believe when we get into those emotional states, our energy frequency changes. And I believe it brings us closer to a frequency range where we can receive intuitive information from those, what I believe, invisible benevolent forces who are
Of course.
constantly trying to get helpful messages to us. We, for
Yes.
those moments, are closer to that vibration, that frequency, to receive those messages. So it's not a state to shy away from. And
Yeah,
it's
when
not.
you meditate. I believe we talked about
Oh
that,
yeah,
right?
oh yeah, yeah.
So I meditated today for way longer than I had anticipated. I thought it was going to be about 15 minutes, and I just got into a deep zone, and I was about 45 minutes
Hmm.
in, where I was like, I have to get up and prepare now and get out of this state. But when I was in the meditation today, when I'm open, and I have done a lot of crying, started doing the video, the energy flows differently. It's colorful when I meditate, it's green. And when it's more clogged, it's like it takes a long time to get there and it feels tight. But when I'm more open, it just kind of like is loose. I don't know if that makes sense to you, if you've had that same experience of seeing the colors. Do you see colors when you meditate?
No, I don't, but it makes sense to me completely. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, I wish I did.
No, I've looked online to
Yeah.
see if my experience is similar, and there are artists who have had it, and it looks exactly
Oh wow, cool.
exactly like what I see. So it feels interesting to
Mm,
know that other people are seeing the same thing I'm seeing in an energy pattern for us. So, it's like your third eye
yep,
will
yep.
open and close. It kind of like pulsates and it's got this green ring around it. And then it can also start to kind of just do these waves. It's super cool. But when I'm open, when I'm closed, when I've actually haven't meditated in a while, or I haven't really, if I feel like I've been closed off, I don't see that. It takes a lot longer to see the color.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's like if you and I both, by coincidence, last night watched the same TV show and we're now talking about it, and you go, "Oh, did you see the bit with the?" So we both tapped into an invisible frequency because it's coming through the airwaves, and it's going into our television, which is the receiver. And both of our televisions are designed to interpret that invisible information and put it on the screen. And
Right.
so it'd be like if you and I watched the same TV show and we wrote a description or of what that was about, it would be quite similar because, yeah, I mean, obviously we would both be more interested in different parts of the movie. But if it was a 3 minute, intense movie, then we would be more interested in the same. We'd be describing the same thing rather than a 2 hour movie.
Yeah. It's
Um,
just, I didn't know somebody else was watching the movie.
yeah,
I
yeah,
said, is this
exactly.
that's why it was exciting because I thought, oh, wow, this movie's being played for other people as well.
Yeah, yeah, that thing. Yeah, and I guess it's you and those others have tapped into that same frequency range, and it's like on the dial on your car with the radio stations. The old-fashioned radios. You turn it, you get static, and then you hooked into 95.7 or 88.1 or whatever it is. When you hit that bit on the dial, you're both listening to the same song or the same
Yeah,
news broadcast or whatever. Yeah.
that's
So,
cool. That's
hmm.
totally true.
Yeah, yeah. That's sort of how I look at it, and I try and explain that to men. Like it's science. This is nothing like woo woo or it's unseen. And I love the unseen realm, and that is another thing with in the Chinese medicine, the water sign. It's we are the represent because some people are like fire and they're like middle of the day, like when the sun's at the peak in the middle of the at noon, and that's their energy. If and we've all got bits of everything. So it's not like what I'm about to explain is not how you and I are only. No, it's a part of us, but it's a little stronger in us both. Where the water, we are after death and before birth. We're in that dark place. And I don't mean dark by evil or not nice, but in the womb.
Mm,
The baby in the womb. It's where pre-birth and after death. We're in that's where that water realm is. So it's that unseen realm for here
mm.
on earth. And that's why we tend to I can talk about death for half an hour and it doesn't bother me at all. I don't. So
Yes.
my wife thinks it's absolutely morbid to talk about death, and I'm like, really? Like it's just
There's no such
normal.
thing.
Yeah, no, yeah,
The death is not
exactly.
a real thing.
Yeah, Yeah, it's just moving to another. It's just like, oh, I hopped in my car and I drove up the road. I'm not at home now. I'm up the road. I'm
It's an
just moved
illusion.
somewhere. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just a different realm, a different whatever, and it's
That's
and
how so many people they mess up their whole life because of their view on death. They're so afraid because of death.
yeah,
The way that they live is because they're afraid of death. The way that they do things is because they're afraid of death. Once you, and by the way, I haven't always been this way. This is something that happened later in life where my views
mm,
on death changed. Um, but where I am now, I just have had a real, I guess, a death of ego I had, and now so I just go, oh my God, this is not really me. This person that's playing me, this guy named Rich, who's a coach and who played baseball and was a comedian. He's the front person, and it's a part of me, sure, but like I'm also this inner light that is eternal, that has probably had a lot of front people over the course of time. It's just my opinion, but it feels so different when you start to look at time differently. Like time doesn't really exist to me. I think we're experiencing many things at one time. It would make sense that we don't, our energy would just not have to be in one place. It could be in many places at the same time. And that's so freeing. That feeling of death is not real is the most freeing thing. And that this is, I look at life as a learning. This is all a learning atmosphere. You're learning, you're growing, and that's what it's about. So when I face a challenging situation, which I have seemed to have faced my fair share of challenging situations in my life, I don't look at it the way that I maybe used to look at it. Why me? Why is this happening to me? And now I actually say, okay, all right, cool. What is the learning? So I can move through this and move to whatever is next. And just like, let's tackle this, figure out what there is to learn from this, pay attention, and move on. So I don't have to do the same thing over and over and over again and feel the same pain points.
yeah. You know, I love that. That's yeah. I'm on board with you on all of that. And I sometimes I think of a lot of things, and I so what I'm about to say next, it's like it's not like I believe this is for sure, but it possibly is, the simulation theory. Like we're just, like we're in a simulation, and we've just, if you've ever played the, Mario Kart or something like that, you get to pick your car. You're going to have a car with the
Yeah.
big tires, little tires, with turbo engine or a normal engine or whatever, and you picked it. And so this time we've picked these avatars, and we're in this body this time, and it's just a game, and we move on. And I can remember when we got our first computer, and we bought the game SimCity, and you could turn there was like a hurricane. You could turn that on or off.
Yeah.
And if you had it turned on just for fun to see what would happen, you'd be building this city, and you'd built a school and a factory and all these houses. And then the hurricane came and it just wiped half your town out. And you're like, oh, bugger. The simulation, it just came in when it decided to come in random. When you got to a certain stage, it was going to be destruction. You just started to rebuild and repopulate, and it's the simulation. And it's yeah, that
It's
was
so funny. You just gave me goosebumps when you said a simulation because it felt so like synchronicity to me. Because I was meditating probably 4 or 5 months ago, and I was going through a tough thing. And I was really feeling stressed. And I was like, I just want to get back to my core and not be so tied up into this ego. And in my head, I heard whispered, this is all a simulation. And I came out of that meditation and I ran to my wife and I said, oh my God, I can't believe what this just happened. I heard it clear as day. This is all a simulation. And isn't it such a simulation? And I haven't I mean, maybe you have because you've talked to a lot of people. I haven't heard a lot of people use that exact phrase. So when you just used it, it was like, wow, that's you just kind of validating what I heard, which is that this is all a simulation. And I think it's very well could be. And again, these are our opinions. And I don't care if somebody else wants to believe something else, totally okay with me. I don't push my beliefs on anybody, but I do feel like it's a simulation.
yeah.
I do. And I
Uh,
had this other thing happen. I'm really going to sound out there now, but oh well. I was talking to my son and I felt like, wow, like I had this weird feeling that we travel together. in a few lives, and we switch roles. Like he's the father, I'm the son. I'm the father, he's the son. And we're trying to piggyback and learn off of each other until we get to the place we need to be. And, he's playing the hard role this time because he's got it much harder than I do with the way that he has to handle his emotions. And I thought, oh, I wonder if next time he'll get the easy role. And it was all happening while I'm driving. And I looked over at him and I said, I probably shouldn't share this with him. Not yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was going to say, like, how did your wife take that when you said that to her? She
Oh,
went on with it.
she's on board. She's
Oh,
on board.
okay.
She's with our conversations. She's the most amazing woman. I married the absolute perfect person for me. We don't use the TV. We say, let's watch that documentary. She's a documentary filmmaker.
Hmm.
I say, let's watch that documentary. Blah blah blah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we sit down for dinner, and 4 hours later, we're still talking about the universe and about the learning environment and the simulation and the way that we had synchronicities and things that have happened and talking to the other side, all these beautiful things. She's very, very much on board with it.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, you got someone to have a conversation with. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
think I could. I think it'd be hard to be married to somebody who wasn't growing. Look, the truth is when we met, we were in a it was 6 years ago. We've been together 6 years. I was going through a divorce. She had been divorced for a while. I was going through a health crisis, which you had mentioned. I had got diagnosed with this lung condition that was potentially going to kill me at the time. And, I wasn't the person I am now at all. I was a loving person. I was a person that could have emotion, but my belief system was completely different. And she started to evolve first. She started to kind of show signs of being in touch with the universe in a different way. And then I said, you know what? Like, I want to start exploring what she's exploring. I want to read what she's reading. She was reading, I think his name is Michael Pollock about psilocybin, and then she was reading different books about, the elders and books about indigenous people and their beliefs. And she was starting to get ready for a documentary film. And I thought, I don't want her to grow too far ahead of me that I can't have these conversations with her. So I dove in to make sure that I could continue to be a good support system for her. But what I didn't realize was this was meant for me. She led me to it, and now I'm pulling her along too. Like she was way ahead, and I'm like, come on, let's go here, let's try this. And she does too. We both are, but no longer am I just following her in the path. I am fully on that path.
Yeah, it's great. Love hearing that. That's beautiful. And when you were saying that, it just reminded me like occasionally things would happen with me, like you'd come across a book synchronistically or whatever, or you'd listen to someone, on YouTube or something like that. And I mean, I listen to a lot of people, I read a lot of books, but there's certain moments, there's certain parts of certain books, there's certain things people say, and it's just like bits that
Right.
change your life. It's like there was a particular book that I'd heard mentioned about 5 years ago, and then probably 4 and 3 years ago. And I'm like, because of the title, various reasons, didn't want to read it. I'm like, yeah, nah, not interested in that. And then there's a guy who listen to his podcast occasionally, and I don't enjoy all of his podcasts at all, but occasionally I really enjoy some of them. So he had this person on this day and I'd never heard of him. So he introduced him and he's sort of like, da, 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 da. And he's the author of this book. And I'm like, oh, that's that book that I didn't want to, rejected just because of the name of the title. No idea what's in it. And so he starts and he's sort of like praising this guy up, like, I have read this book 10 years ago and it changed my life. And like, and you could tell he was super happy to have this. This was like almost the pinnacle of his podcast. It had this author on. And I thought, oh, well, I'll have a listen to whatever. And then I was gobsmacked. And like the second the podcast was over, bang, I've downloaded on my thing, through Kindle, bang, got his book. And oh, no, actually, no, got it an ebook, like to listen to it. And it was a 3 book series. And I'm like, and then as soon as I finished it, I listened to it again. And that's one of those moments for me that I look back on. And this has happened sort of in the last year, this one, but there's a lot of other ones previous where they're just life defining moments that it's like, wow, when I finished listening to that book, that my whole worldview has changed. And it's not like I'm religiously 100% indoctrinated into that that's the way life runs, but it's like I'm now adding that to my tool belt, and it helps me. I was able to look at things at three different angles before. Now it's added a fourth different angle. Like if I'm still
Wow.
not
What's the
sure,
book?
Conversations with God. Have you heard
Okay.
of it?
I feel like I've heard of it, but I'm not sure. It
Yeah,
sounds familiar.
yeah. And look, I had a very strong upbringing in the church, and just I haven't been to church in a real long time, and won't go into that. But yeah, just that I'm thinking, oh, like I've read the
Right.
Bible from cover to cover several times. It's just someone's version of God. Oh yeah, nah, not interested. But
Hmm.
it's a three books series, and the guy was homeless and everything like before he wrote the book. It just he's still listening to him on the podcast was just that was what I needed to hear. I needed to hear why he wrote the book and how he wrote the book, or books, the three of them. And that was like, okay, that just changed my whole headspace on reading the book or
You were led to it.
listening to it. Sorry.
You were led. That happened to me
Oh,
with a book called Seth Speaks. Have you ever heard of that book?
yes. Yeah. Oh, jingos. I was 15 years. Yeah, probably nearly 15 years ago. I've read four or five or more of those. Yeah. Yeah.
So I had never heard that book in my life, and somebody said to me, "You should really read this book."
Yeah.
So I picked up the book, and I was going to travel to my in-laws. My father-in-law is just this brilliant man, who's actually invented a bunch of stuff, and he's just got a really good mind. And I'm at his house, and he's like 86 years old, and he doesn't talk a lot, but when he says stuff, he means things. Like his words carry wisdom. He doesn't use a lot of them, but when he speaks, you should listen. So he was walking by, and I had the book on the counter, and he looked at me and he said, "Where did you get that book?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Where did you get that book?" I said, "I just had it. I had it. I think I had it delivered there." So I had it delivered here. I haven't even started reading it. He says, "Come upstairs. I want to show you something." And he had every book from this person, every single
Oh, yeah,
book.
there's a lot of them. Yeah.
And he said,
Yeah.
"I started reading this when I guess when he was a lot younger." And he's like, I'm interested to have you read it to see what you think. And the book was so meant for me at that time. It was so meant for, I needed to read that book at that point in my journey. And I was almost done with it. And I was traveling back, and I was at the airport, and I had put it next to me on the seat, like in the waiting area. And
Mhm.
I got up to do something, and I forgot the book. And I thought to myself, maybe my journey was just to carry this book for somebody else. Somebody needed that book. I really think that. I think I left that book because somebody needed to pick it up and read it. And I needed to read it when I read it too, but it was just crazy, the synchronicities of him having read all of it and then having it apply so perfectly to me of where I was in my life at that point.
Yeah.
Because I had been able to start to communicate with the other side a little bit, and I was a little confused by what was going on. And that book was like, oh wow, this is kind of how it feels, and it validated it for me. But just to have that experience, that's kind of what that book was for me. Same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I've so those channel books like that. I've read four or five of those, and then Joan Roberts has got another one that she wrote. She didn't channel it, and it's called I think something like Over Soul 7, and it's a fictional book about a man and a woman who are near the end of their life, and I think they're traveling in an RV, low budget, sort of zooming around America, living and they well, I think one of the men, I think she ends up in a nursing home, and it's the whole thing, just the way she describes the whole thing. This old lady, she's sort of in this wheelchair, all decrepit in the nursing home, and the old nurse sort of pushes that lady and three or four others of them sort of in their wheelchairs up to the window so they can sit in the sun, and they're just all sitting there dribbling. And you're thinking, they're just old, decrepit, they're about to die. But no, they're all now journeying out of their bodies and flying around the nursing home
Oh,
and leave and going out into the street and doing things and then
oh,
coming back
wow.
into these decrepit old. But it's a trip. It's a very
That's fun.
interesting way to look at the aging process and dealing with it and from a whole different angle. And it's like, wow, and it's just all fictional. I think that's the only fictional one she wrote. All the others were channeled, I think.
My
But
grandmother used to tell me that she used to leave her body and she could see her body while she was sleeping, and she would journey all over the world.
yeah,
And when she died, before she died, she told me, I wake up every morning at 3:33. I've been doing it for years. I get up at 3:33 and I get something to eat and go back to bed. I don't know why I wake up at 3:33, but when I die, I'm going to come start visiting you at 3:33. So when you wake up at 3:33, you'll know it's me. So she died and I was 14. I think I was 14. And beginning the very first night, 3:33. This happened for about 50, 60 straight days. I couldn't even sleep in my room. I was so freaked out by it. I would wake up in the middle of the night and be so afraid to open my eyes because I knew what the clock was going to say. And I'd open my eyes and there it would be 3:33. So she came to me in a dream and said, "This is all you've created this. I'm not coming to you at 3:33. I'm totally fine. And I promise you, you're never going to wake up at 3:33 again, but you will see the number throughout your whole life, and that is me saying hello." So I said, "Okay, never in my life have I woken up at 3:33 ever again since that dream. But I will tell you this. When I was meditating, my grandmother recently came through to me and she said, I will be your guide into this world. You know, that you're now starting to hear stuff and hear the language. I will be your guide into this." And I was like, okay, cool. And I was driving and back to Brooklyn from New Jersey, and a truck cut me off. And on the back of the truck, it said 333 Transport Services. And I said, "Oh wow, that's like that." I don't know how she managed that one. I don't know how she found a truck that has transport services on it, but okay. And it's been like that. One, I see 333 everywhere I go. All the receipts on counter, like even the TV show, the Meredith Vieira show, was a big show that I really worked hard on, and it was really hard when it was going off the air. It was really really hard for me emotionally. And the last day of taping, I was really sad. And, I felt like I had let Meredith down, who's a good friend. Oh, of course, I didn't. I worked my butt off for that show, but that's what I felt in the moment. And when we called a wrap, we said, "That's a wrap. The season's over." I looked at the clock and it was three, and I took a picture, 3:33.
there
And I
you
was like,
go.
okay, I'm gonna be fine. But she's shown up for me with that number over and over and over again.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, I know the flying out of their bodies. My dad, he spent the last 10, 11 months of his life in a nursing home, and he absolutely hated it there because he didn't have privacy and and he was 99% deaf. So they would knock on his door, but he didn't, all of a sudden they'd appear in his room and because he couldn't hear him knocking on the door and all that sort of stuff. So probably the last 4 or 5 days, he couldn't get out of bed because he used to have a walker. He'd walk around and all that sort of stuff. And the night before he went, we'd been to see him through the day, come home. And as I got into bed that night before he went, I just saw this vision of him coming out of his body and flying around the nursing home. And like he was being a little bit rude. He was sort of like giving the finger sign and like "Yeah, I've got like I'm out of my body, I'm free, and I'm flying around this nursing home." So anyway, the next day, my wife and I, my brother and mum, we go to see dad, and he's never woke up or anything, but about 11 that morning, all of a sudden, the four of us just knew he'd gone because the whole energy in the room just changed. And we're sort of
Hmm.
looking at him, and his skin's starting to change color. So my older brother, goes and gets the nurses, and the three nurses come, and they all have their stethoscopes, and they all have a turn. And because it's middle of COVID, so they've all got masks on, and they turn to us, and oh, that's right. And then my wife says to mum, because mum was in the nursing home in another room, in another wing, like, so just come on, like I'll take you back to your room. And so it was just my brother and I there. And like I got this same vision again, like that he's right now, he's left his body and he's flying around this nursing home like just like a teenager, like, yo, baby, because I'm not 92 anymore. I'm like,
Right.
I'm out of this body, you know. And the nurses turn and they're sort of like looking all sad and they're like, oh, we're so sorry for your loss and everything, but he's definitely gone and da 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 da. And my brother's 12 years older than me, and he's a little bit more, he's the oldest and I'm the youngest. And he's a lot more sedate and that sort of thing. And, you know, and I said to these nurses, I said, it's all right. Like, we don't have to be sad. I said, Dad's actually, I said, I can see him flying around the nursing home. I just told him what I could see. Like, you know, he's whipping around here. I didn't sort of tell him that he was giving everybody the finger sign like he was, you know,
You kept that part to yourself.
yeah. But yeah, and they're sort of looking at me like you know, because all I can see is their eyes because of the masks over their noses and mouth, and they're like looking at me. And my brother never reacted; he never said a word. But yeah, I just gave him quite a you know, vivid description of what I could see Dad doing right now. And
Good
but
for
yeah, it's
you.
just like yeah,
What a gift.
yeah,
It's so funny how people react to death. Like the nurses who are around it all the time still
mm,
are not always comfortable with it. Even the way that they will tell you that somebody passed and their eyes are like this because you're talking about it, and they're probably getting goosebumps and going, "Oh my God, is that real?" And your brother is just shutting down and just saying like, "Okay, I'm just gonna kind of like skip through this."
yeah.
And you're living it. You're in it. You're actually experiencing it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's and then probably about 6 weeks after Dad went, I listened to a guided meditation that was went for about 50 minutes. That was a very full on deep one. And it's by a lady called Anita Morjani, and she'd had a very, very profound near-death experience. And she'd what's that? Oh, there's a Hollywood music producer. Use the word producer very loosely because I'm not that familiar with the terms you would. And if I said his name, I'm sure you would know his name. Like he's done
It's
the.
so weird. I'm gonna say a name.
Mm,
And I can't be possibly be accurate, but are you talking about Scott Rudin?
no, I think his surname starts with Gold, like Gold something or other. I think.
Okay.
And anyway, he produced the music for this um, guided meditation. Like, so it's very professional. And she talks through it. Anyway, she says in part of it, I want you to think about the person who has hurt you the most. And it was just no option for me. Like it's Dad. And now I want you to do this, and all, you know, this sort of stuff. And then she kind of like, because it goes for 50 minutes, she kind of, for a while in there, there's like maybe 10 minutes where the music's just gently playing and she leaves you to your thoughts. And she wants you to think about specific things. And it's just like Dad came to me and just had this big conversation with me of like why he was like he was, and you know, da 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 da. And you know, we agreed before you were born on this and that and the other, and la 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 la, and this is what's all happened. And it was like, whoa. So all of a sudden, my view of my father 6 weeks after he died was radically different than it was for the whole lot. Because, like you said earlier, you know, like I used to as a kid, I had some, I had a lot of friends, and I would go to their houses after school or on the weekends, and because they never came to our house because they weren't welcome. Like my dad did not want any of our friends over. Like he just, you know, they might break a leaf off one of his fruit trees or something as we threw a ball or something that was just, so I always had to go to other kids' houses. And not all of them, but some of my friends as fathers were really, really nice people. And I would always think, why can't my dad be like that? You know, like,
That
uh,
wasn't his role to play.
no, exactly. He was setting like a very good example for me in the opposite form. So I knew how not to be. But yeah, very,
You can
very.
also help people. You said earlier that water people are, they're in the darkness, right? Before and after. And don't you think that what we do as coaches, and even probably what you're doing with your podcast, is helping a lot of people navigate through that darkness
Mm,
and back to the light? And I don't think, had you not had that father, had you not had the experiences you've had I not gone through a tough divorce, had I not had things happen to me when I was younger in my childhood, I wouldn't be able to lift people through the darkness and lead them back to the light. You have to have experienced the darkness. You can't just say, I want to help people, and they're in a really tough place. If you don't know what that place feels like, or you can't at least associate in some way to where they are from a pain perspective, how are you going to lead them out?
Yeah, very, very true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's just how it was at the time. You just went through it and you did it. And yeah,
And look at you
it's
now.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Gratitude is the people say all the time, you got to forgive because you have to forgive. And forgiveness is great, but the truth is, without gratitude applied towards that situation, there is no forgiveness. The forgiveness, you can say you forgive and try to move it out of your memory, but if you don't put gratitude toward that thing and say, okay, what positive learnings did I get from this, or how did this impact me in a positive way? All it is trauma that
Mm.
stays forever. If you can apply gratitude to almost anything in your life, you can find a way to move past it.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and now we've got four adult sons, and they're amazing. And I've learnt how not to parent them. You know, how like it's not like I'm an
Yeah.
expert at doing it, but I learned a lot of things not to do. So I tried to was not
And they'll
include a
go
lot
through
of
their
different
pain
things.
too. They're going to go through their pain too. You can't. I was thinking today about how how often we just think, I just need to get through this current wave when things aren't going the way that you want them to, and then I'll be okay when I'm at this point. And the truth is there is never a point where things are just okay. There's always a part of your life that's out of balance that you're working on. Except for the fact that every single moment of your life things are okay. The key is no matter what part you're in to just say I'm okay. And I think for our kids, it's easier said for me and you as people who have done a bunch of work, right? But when it comes to being a parent, a dad, you want to just fix things. You want to help the kids. You want to move them through it. You want to say, oh, how do I get them to where they need to be? And I think the lesson for me today was teach them instead of trying to get through it, teach them how to be in it.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's the key.
yeah, yeah. Something I came across a few months ago. I was listening to a Austrian philosopher on a podcast being interviewed by a guy studying neurological stuff. And it was a very, the Austrian professor guy, he was sort of probably late 70s. And he said, I've now come to a point where I've realized that contentment is very important, far more important than happiness, because happiness is almost like an emotion, it's fleeting. And he
Totally.
said the world's constantly trying to find a job that makes them happy or to be how they want to be happy all the time. And he said it's, like trying to hold on to water. You can't, there's no handles. It's
No,
you just can't keep that happiness happening. He said, and when he said that, it was a real revelation for me, like that can being content. And I'm thinking, I'm extremely content with how my children's lives are going, with how my life is and how it's evolving and unfolding and that sort of thing. And it's like, I think, and because he sort of said that feeling of contentment can stay with you for a long time rather than it's not like an emotion where it's going to come and go. And it's, yeah, since I've heard that, I'm thinking, yeah, wow, I am. I mean, because you could also say, well, if you're just sitting there content, you're not going to set goals, you're not going to achieve and strive forward for improvement and that sort of thing. And I hear that. But, I'm 61 now, and I'm like, and I'm not just going to sit. I'm definitely not sitting, resting on my laurels of things I've done and now just, but I now have, I realize I do have very much a sense of contentment with my life. And I realize I don't have to strive. I don't have to, it's, if we are going back to previous earlier, if we are in a simulation, it's, you know, do I really? And as you've sort of alluded to, like I think we get to be in more than one, scenario of these. We've probably been in two or three, or two or 300, or two or 3,000,
you're right.
or
Yeah, who
I
knows?
don't know. Like there's simulations, and we to get to a stage where you're content with it because you can see a bigger picture. you know,
Hmm.
not just like, oh, I finally paid my mortgage off, I own my house, like, oh, now I'm content. No, it's not that. It's I can see a much bigger picture. Like I said to you when I, read a different book, now instead of seeing things from two different angles, then three angles, now I can see things from four angles. And, next week or next year or 5 years' time, I might be able to see things from five different angles that just help, see what's really going on. And
Hmm.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think content leads to joy. Content is different than so the last pope that was with the Catholic Church uh, had said something about like the problem with our society right now is that people just don't care. They turn their head on everything. They just go, "That's not my problem. That's not my problem. That's not my problem." He used a word, and I can't think of exactly the word. It's not the same as content. Content is not turning your head away from things or not wanting to achieve something. Content is being okay with the process. So what I used to see with celebrities all the time was they were had something that they were trying to fill, a dark hole, usually, not always, but usually. And they thought that becoming a celebrity was going to fix it. And so what I tell clients now, and I've done social media on this, is don't live your life like there's a finish line. Because once you get there, you're going to realize that you're still not happy and you're going to be really upset because you thought this thing, if you got this thing, everything would be okay. Getting the thing is fine, but it's getting the thing is not what makes you joyous. It's not what makes you content. Content comes in every step that you take. Content comes in the journey. Content comes in presence, not in like finally achieving something. And even in that thing you achieve, and that's the other thing, don't set end goals when people say, I want to lose 40 pounds, once they lose 40 pounds, what happens oftentimes? They go gain it back because that was an end goal. It wasn't, I want to get healthier. It wasn't, I want to, have my body be working when I'm older. That's something that every year you can go, okay, now I've lost 30 pounds. What's next? Now I want to run a marathon. What's next? Now I want to, be able to go on vacation with my kids and swim or whatever it is. That is no finish line. Having a finish line is what we're taught with goals all the time is you work really hard and you can just push to that goal. And once you get that goal, you'll have everything you want. It's not true. You
Mm.
have to be content in your life and each step. You have to wake up. And when you're feeling all those, and by the way, even people like me and you who have done a lot of work, we still wake up and feel dread. We still wake up and feel anxiety. We still fear that something's going to happen in the future that hasn't happened yet, or we get caught into the past. But what the difference is that we are able to ground ourselves, come back into the now, look up and see a tree or a bird or whatever it is that brings us back, or pet our dog, whatever it is, and then become content with where we are right now.
Yeah, yeah. And that
That's
just
it.
leads into gratitude, and you're just like, yeah,
That's the
it's
manual.
yeah,
That's the manual for life. Like it's not easy to do, but it's easy to know. And when
yeah,
you tell people this is what it is. This is all it is. Just be happy in the moments that you have. Every moment is a moment on top of a moment. There is no future. There is no past. All there is now. I love Eckhart Tolle. I'm a huge fan of Eckhart Tolle, and I do believe that what he says is true. Just the future is nothing but a bunch of nows stacked up on top of each other.
mm,
And even in the future, you're now, and in the past, it was now. But oftentimes, we're time traveling. We're all over the place. We're like Marty McFly. And if you've watched Back to the Future, nothing good happens from time traveling.
yeah, true.
Nothing good happens.
Yeah, very true, very true. Yes, yeah, yes. You just if you're going to time travel, you just want to be a fly on the wall with no ability to interact. Yeah,
Right. Well, don't even time travel because what's the point? You this right now, that conversation that we just had, if we both had to repeat it, we would not even be the same as what we just did because it's already a memory. So how we see it is not even accurate.
yeah, true, true, true. All right, excellent conversation. I'll have all your contact details and things in the show notes. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would really like to mention or bring up? Or
I came into this, Doug, and I said to myself, you and this guy had a great rapport. Just go with whatever happens. And I didn't look at what I sent you as topics. I don't really care. Like it was such a great, lovely conversation with you. That's exactly what I wanted it to be. So
That's what
I
it's
feel
been.
like it was terrific.
Yeah,
You're a kindred spirit.
yeah, yeah. No, I loved it. I think we've touched on a lot of things that will help men, give men something to think about, like, give them something to ponder. Um, might make some of them think, yeah, like I wanna, I want to listen to something. I want to read something. I want something that is I can look back in 5 years' time and think that was a defining moment when I read that new book or when I heard that new bit of information. Just give them the hunger for going out there. And some of them might think, I have had this book mentioned 2 or 3 times in the last couple of weeks or last couple of months. Maybe the universe is trying to encourage me to read this book or listen to that ebook or listen to this podcast or whatever to yeah.
Have
So
you read
yeah,
The End of Your World
the
by
end of the
Shante?
world. No, no.
Oh, from what our just conversation that we just had, you should pick that up immediately.
Okay.
It's The End of Your World.
I'm
Um,
just writing it down right now. The end of your world.
it's A-D-Y Shante, Shanti. It is such a good book, and every time you read it, you'll get a different message. I
Honestly.
think the thing that I'm realizing, Doug, that I want to share with you, just because we've shared so much today, is one of the mistakes that I've made a lot is assuming I know who somebody is based on the exterior that I see. And I think with men in particular, because we had certain type of men in our families, we're reluctant to cross the line and say, hey, it's okay. Even those men that are in those positions want what we have.
Yeah.
And you should not, and I've seen this with clients now, where I was fearful going in at first with certain types of men, every one of them eventually breaks down and cries. And then the next day sends me a text saying, I haven't felt this light in years.
Yeah.
They all want it. And it's our responsibility as people who have gotten there to recognize that don't assume that somebody doesn't need it. Just give, 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 give. And if they come to it, great. But don't look at somebody and go, like if you're meeting a man at a party and they seem rough and gruff and they're alpha and they're bragging about all their things, you just stay in tune with who you are. And before you know, I met a guy on the street today, a CFO of a company. I ended up talking to him for half an hour and I gave him my phone number. He was talking about my wife was saying, you know what you need to do, Rich? You should be working with men who have already made their money, but still haven't gotten in touch with that side of themselves. That's your audience. That's what you should be doing. That's your audience. "Oh, okay, all right." And I got outside and I met that exact guy. And I said, oh, wow, that's weird that the universe would do that. And I was giving him all these strategies on the street. Apply the same exact strategies that you did to become successful in business to your personal life. What made you successful? How do you do it? What are your strategies? What's your decision-making process now? Put it here. How do you commit your time? How do you schedule? How do you organize? Put it here. And I'm coaching this guy on the street. And, by the end of it, he was going to move to Pennsylvania with a dog and be amongst the trees with the person and this guy had just gone through a divorce and he's traveling all over the place making a lot of money but not very much in touch with the other side of himself. And I feel like in a 20-minute conversation on the street, that space that I was able to hold with where I am allowed him to see a different future,
Mm,
you
beautiful.
know? So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I'll leave you with that.
That's why we do it. Excellent. That's a great message for the men listening, I can tell you. Excellent. Well, thank you, Rich. Yeah, been like I say, I think we've connected very well. We're on the very similar path and trajectory and think very similar way. And I think it's great for the men out there to hear. And it's not like you and I have a handle on everything. We've got a handle on some things. And what we've talked about is what the men who are listening need to hear. It's great.
Totally. Thank you,
Excellent.
Doug. It's been such a joy being on the show and talking to you for the last hour. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. My pleasure. Thank you. Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition, it will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.